So there are 5 adults here. Good afternoon, everyone. So to start my speech, I'd like to wish a very happy birthday to the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. That's 49 years old today, so happy birthday. I don't think there's any other band besides the Beatles that have stayed so universally relevant and have been so well adored throughout time. I still remember the first time I listened to Eleanor Rigby in the car and then just went home and listened to all their songs. And this was in the 8th grade. So since then I've become sort of a Beatles expert. And so what I'd like to talk about today is how the Beatles really introduced the idea of the concept album between the years of 1965 and 1967. So what we're going to discuss is what is a concept album and what makes it different than a normal album. We're going to talk about the album Revolver, which came out in 1966. It was the album right before Sgt. Pepper's. And we're going to talk about how it possessed some of the qualities of a concept album, but wasn't completely there. And then we'll talk about their masterwork, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And specifically, we'll talk about the album artwork, because that really displays what they were going for with that project. So what is a concept album? On the screen I have a few that you may know or may not. But what a concept album is it's the most complete work that a musical artist can make. Jim Clark, the author, says that it's a collection of discrete but theoretically unified songs where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's the most important aspect of what a concept album is that all the songs in it should be listened to in order, in one sitting, and all the songs should build towards a central idea or theme or emotion. So first we'll talk about Revolver. The concept of Revolver is sort of that the Beatles, which previously had been a pop icon, they were the darlings of every teenager and young adult. But the concept of what it is that their identity is changing and the times are changing as well. So first thing you can look at is the album artwork. You can look at that, although their faces are the biggest things on the picture, what's in the middle and arguably is the most important are tiny pictures of their faces. So what they're saying with this picture is that yes, our musical identity or our pop culture identity is what makes us, but what we really are is what's inside. So what's inside is the record. Ian Engels of the Cambridge University Press says that they were purposefully trying to eschew the conventions of the personality cover. So the personality cover would be a cover where it's just their faces and they're smiling all bright, sort of like their first album, Please Please Me. But they wanted to purposely subvert that because they were really getting into what was known as the counterculture movement. So the counterculture movement was the movement in the mid to late 60s where kids were rebelling, everyone was doing drugs, and the general atmosphere was, we're not listening to the old ways, we're not listening to our parents, we're going to create a new society and it's going to be the way we want it. And the Beatles were all on board, leading the charge. So the final work that I'm going to talk about, and it's their ultimate, I think, album, is Sgt. Pepper's. So this came out in 1967, a year after Revolver, and it really is a complete creation by the Beatles. The title, Sgt. Pepper's, refers to an identity they've created for themselves. It's a fake band present in the picture, and they've sort of like invited you to a party that's presented by this fake band, and together they've got all the people they've looked up to in their lives on the cover. You know, you have artists, writers, actors, and you even have the Beatles, or the old Beatles rather, as wax figurines. So one thing that's very special about this cover that makes it a really good concept album is that the people on the cover represent the Beatles themselves. So on the cover, you have a mixture of high art people and low art people. You have Marilyn Monroe, who is representing pop culture and the masses. Then you have people like Ernest Hemingway and Karl Marx, which represents the high-minded people who were scoffing at the pop culture of the day. And so what they're doing with that is saying that the Beatles themselves are sort of an amalgamation of that. They're taking elements of high art, which they do on the album with the orchestral music and very advanced musical technique, and they're combining it with their pop appeal, which they had always had. Also, the fact that they've got all these people on here which represent so many different ideals, as Stephen Stark says, really gets to the communalism they were trying to foster. They were trying to say, let us unite our youth movement, let us unite the counterculture, and let's actually make a positive change. Later they'll write a song called All You Need Is Love, and that's pretty much what they were getting at with this album as well. It's also the first album to feature the lyrics on the back. So with that, they're saying, we understand that the listener should take this as an intellectual work as well as something to just listen to. They're not selling the listener short. They think that the listener should be able to read all their songs, understand all their songs, and get the message they're getting across. Yeah, and it's ranked #1 on Rolling Stone's best albums of all time. So I highly recommend you give it a listen. To summarize what we've gone over then, we've gone over what a concept album is, how Revolver possessed many qualities of a concept album but wasn't quite there, and then we talked about the cover of Sgt. Pepper's and why that really showed how Beatles had finally created something that was entirely their own. So in conclusion, I'd like to implore all of you to go give a concept album a listen. Just sit down, it's only like 30 minutes of your time, and just see what an artist has to say, really. Maybe in the words of John Lennon, relax, turn off your mind, and float downstream. Give it a try. So you guys have any questions?
Very good.
What's a concept album today?
What would be an example of a concept album today? A popular one would be maybe Green Day's American Idiot. That's even a stage play now. You can tell that when you can make a movie, you think, about a play, that's how you know. Make a movie about an album. That's how you know that it was pretty high-minded. Any other questions?
Where can you buy these albums? Where do you get them? These old
The actual
albums?
records?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the record store community is vibrant now. I think 2014 was the highest sales of vinyl records since like 1980 something.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been better than it has been in the past, really. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, record stores, or those are the main places. Online is also great. Anyone else have any other questions? Like real questions, no one's wondering anything? All right, thank you very much.